Elvis visited a little girl in the hospital who hadn't spoken in over a year. He didn't sing to her. He didn't try to make her talk. He just sat with her in silence. 2 years later, when she finally spoke again, her first words were about him. But by then, it was too late to say thank you. It was June 1975, and Elvis was in Boston for a concert at the Boston Garden. The day before the show, his road manager, Joe Esposito, mentioned that Boston Children's Hospital had requested a visit from Elvis. They had a young patient, an 8-year-old girl named Emma, who was fighting leukemia. "They're not asking you to perform or anything," Joe explained. "The girl's family doesn't even know they reached out. The hospital just thought, well, they thought maybe it might help." Elvis had done hundreds of hospital visits over the years. He'd sung for sick children, signed autographs, brought gifts. He knew the routine. "What time should I be there?" But when Joe briefed him on Emma's situation, this visit felt different. Emma Chen hadn't spoken in 14 months, not since the day she was diagnosed with leukemia. The trauma of learning she had cancer, combined with the painful treatments, had sent her into selective mutism. She could physically speak. There was nothing wrong with her vocal cords. She just didn't. Her parents had tried everything: therapists, specialists, encouraging words, begging, pleading. Nothing worked. Emma had retreated into silence as a way to cope with the unbearable reality of being an 8-year-old girl fighting for her life. The hospital thought maybe Elvis could help. Maybe seeing a famous person would shock her out of it, give her something to be excited about. But Elvis had a different feeling about this visit. Something told him that Emma didn't need excitement. She needed something else entirely. The next morning, Elvis arrived at Boston Children's Hospital wearing sunglasses and a simple jacket, trying to avoid attracting too much attention. The hospital staff led him to the pediatric oncology wing. Emma's room was at the end of the hall. Through the window, Elvis could see a small girl sitting in bed, bald from chemotherapy, staring at a picture book without really looking at it. Her mother sat in a chair beside her, reading aloud, though Emma showed no sign of listening. Dr. Sarah Morrison, Emma's oncologist, briefed Elvis outside the room. "She hasn't spoken since March of last year. She communicates by nodding or shaking her head, sometimes by writing. The mutism is psychological, not physical. We're hoping that meeting you might be the breakthrough she needs." Elvis looked through the window at Emma. Something about her silence felt familiar to him. He'd spent his whole life being loud. Loud music, loud performances, loud everything. But underneath all that noise, Elvis understood what it felt like to retreat into yourself when the world became too much. "What if I don't try to make her talk?" Elvis asked. Dr. Morrison looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Everyone's been trying to get her to speak, right? Her parents, you, the therapists. Everyone wants her to use her voice. What if what she needs is for someone to be okay with her silence?" Elvis entered Emma's room quietly. Her mother, Patricia Chen, stood up immediately, starstruck and grateful. "Mr. Presley, thank you so much for coming. Emma, look who's here. It's Elvis Presley." Emma glanced up briefly, then looked back down at her book. No reaction, no excitement, just the same blank expression she'd worn for 14 months. Elvis smiled at Patricia. "Would it be okay if I just sat with Emma for a little while? Just the two of us?" Patricia hesitated. "She won't talk to you. She doesn't talk to anyone." "I know. That's okay." Patricia left the room, though Elvis could see her watching anxiously through the window. Elvis pulled a chair close to Emma's bed and sat down. He didn't speak. He didn't ask questions. He didn't try to entertain her or make her smile. He just sat there, being present. After a few minutes of silence, Elvis picked up one of the picture books from Emma's bedside table, a book about butterflies. He opened it and started looking at the pictures, not reading aloud, just looking. Emma watched him from the corner of her eye. Elvis turned pages slowly, occasionally pointing at a butterfly he found particularly beautiful, still saying nothing. They sat like that for 20 minutes, just two people sharing space and silence. Then Elvis did something unexpected. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small notebook and a pen. He wrote something down, tore out the page, folded it, and placed it on Emma's bedside table. Then he stood up, gently touched Emma's hand, just a brief, soft touch, and left the room. The whole visit had lasted maybe 30 minutes. Elvis had spoken fewer than 10 words the entire time. After Elvis left, Patricia rushed back into the room. "Emma, honey, wasn't that amazing? Elvis Presley was here. Did he talk to you? Did you—" She stopped when she saw the folded note on the bedside table. Patricia picked it up and read it. "Dear Emma, sometimes the world is too loud and we need to be quiet for a while. That's okay. You don't have to talk until you're ready. Being silent doesn't mean you don't have things to say. It just means you're saving your words for when they really matter. I hope you feel better soon. Your friend, Elvis." Patricia started crying. Not because Elvis had made Emma speak. He hadn't. But because he'd given Emma something more valuable than that. He'd given her permission to be exactly where she was. Emma took the note from her mother's hand and read it herself. Then she carefully folded it back up and placed it under her pillow. Months passed. Emma continued her treatment. The cancer slowly responded to the chemotherapy. She started getting stronger physically, but she still didn't speak. Her parents had given up trying to force it. Dr. Morrison had given up predicting when it might happen. Everyone had accepted that Emma would talk when she was ready, if she was ever ready. Then, in August 1977, something shifted. Emma had been in remission for 3 months. She was home from the hospital, starting to have a normal life again. Her hair was growing back. She was gaining weight. She looked like a regular 10-year-old girl, except for the fact that she still hadn't spoken a word in over 2 years. On August 16, 1977, Emma was having lunch with her parents when the news came on the television. The reporter's voice was somber. "Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, has died at his home in Memphis, Tennessee. He was 42 years old." Patricia and her husband exchanged a glance, both thinking about the day Elvis had visited Emma in the hospital. Then, they heard something they hadn't heard in 28 months. Emma's voice, small and rusty from disuse, but unmistakably clear. "I want to thank Elvis." Patricia dropped her fork. Her husband froze. They both stared at their daughter. Emma looked at them with tears streaming down her face. "I want to thank Elvis for understanding, for not making me talk, for being quiet with me." Patricia rushed to embrace her daughter, crying, "Emma, you're talking. Oh my God, you're talking." "I need to thank him," Emma said, her voice getting stronger with each word. "Can we go to Memphis? Can we go tell him thank you?" Patricia's heart broke as she pulled her daughter closer. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Elvis passed away today. That's what was on the news. He's gone." Emma cried then, deep, racking sobs that seemed to release all the grief and fear and pain she'd been holding inside for more than 2 years. She cried for Elvis, for her own lost time, for everything she'd been through. But she was speaking. After 28 months of silence, Emma Chen was using her voice again. A week later, Patricia called Boston Children's Hospital and asked to speak with Dr. Morrison. She told her about Emma speaking for the first time and how it had happened. Dr. Morrison was amazed. The breakthrough came because of Elvis's death? Not just because he died, Patricia explained, because she realized she'd waited too long to thank him. She'd been holding everything inside, including her gratitude to the one person who understood her silence. When she learned he was gone, she understood that staying silent meant losing the chance to say what mattered. Dr. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Emma's mutism was about control. When she got sick, everything was out of her control. Silence was the one thing she could control. Elvis didn't try to take that control away from her. He respected it. And that respect is probably what allowed her to eventually choose to speak again. That Christmas, Emma asked her parents if they could go to Memphis, to Graceland. She wanted to say her thank you, even if Elvis couldn't hear it. The Chen family made the trip in December 1977. Graceland was closed to the public then. It wouldn't open for tours until 1982. But Emma stood at the gates with her parents and spoke aloud the words she'd been carrying for 2.5 years. "Thank you, Elvis. Thank you for sitting with me when I couldn't talk. Thank you for not trying to fix me. Thank you for understanding that sometimes silence is what we need. I'm talking again now, and the first person I wanted to talk to was you. I'm sorry I waited too long." As Emma spoke, a security guard at Graceland heard her. He came to the gate and listened as this young girl poured her heart out to someone who was no longer there. When Emma finished, the guard introduced himself as Sam. He'd worked at Graceland for years and had known Elvis personally. Elvis did a lot of hospital visits, Sam told the Chen family, but he never talked about them much. He thought talking about charity made it less meaningful. But I remember one time, maybe 1975, he came back from a hospital in Boston. Someone asked him how it went, and he said something I never forgot. Sam paused, remembering. Elvis said, "Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is just be with them. Not fix them, not change them, just be with them." I never knew what visit he was talking about, but I think maybe it was yours, young lady. Emma nodded, crying again. He just sat with me. He didn't try to make me talk. He just understood. Sam smiled. That was Elvis. Everyone thinks he was loud and flashy, and he was on stage. But in private, he knew how to be quiet. He knew how to listen. He knew how to just be present. Emma Chen made it a tradition to return to Graceland every year on the anniversary of her first words, August 16th, the day Elvis died. She would stand at the gates and sing. Not Elvis songs, always. Sometimes hymns, sometimes songs she'd written herself. But she would sing, using the voice that Elvis had helped her find by respecting her silence. As Emma grew older, through her teenage years, through college, through adulthood, she never stopped making that annual pilgrimage to Graceland. After Graceland opened to the public in 1982, Emma would take the tour and always linger in the rooms where Elvis had lived. She'd try to imagine what it was like to be him, constantly surrounded by noise and people and expectations, and how that must have made him understand the value of silence. Emma became a child psychologist specializing in selective mutism. She built her entire career around helping children who'd retreated into silence the way she once had. The key, Emma would tell parents and therapists, is not to force speech. It's to honor the silence, to respect that the child has reasons for their choice, even if those reasons aren't fully conscious. You have to be comfortable with the quiet. You have to show them that their silence doesn't make them less valuable, less loved, less understood. Emma would always tell the story of Elvis's visit to her students and colleagues, about how the most famous entertainer in the world had sat with a silent little girl and didn't try to make her perform, didn't try to get a reaction, just was. Elvis Presley taught me something that changed my life and shaped my career, Emma would say. He taught me that presence is more powerful than words, that sometimes the most meaningful thing you can do for another person is to sit with them in their pain without trying to fix it. In 2007, 30 years after Elvis's death, Emma was invited to speak at a Graceland memorial event. She stood in front of hundreds of Elvis fans and told her story. "I was 8 years old and fighting cancer," Emma said. "I hadn't spoken in over a year. Elvis came to visit me and everyone expected him to make me talk, to shock me out of my silence with his fame and charisma. But he didn't do that. He sat with me. He looked at picture books with me. He didn't ask me questions I couldn't answer. And when he left, he gave me a note that said my silence was okay, that I could take my time." Emma pulled out the original note, worn and faded but preserved in a plastic sleeve. "I've carried this for 30 years. When I finally spoke again, 2 years later, it was because I realized I'd waited too long to thank him. He'd passed away, and I'd lost my chance." Emma's voice broke. "So I come here every year to say what I should have said sooner. Thank you, Elvis. Thank you for understanding what an 8-year-old girl needed wasn't noise. It was someone who could be comfortable with silence." The crowd at Graceland that day was moved to tears. After Emma finished speaking, they sang together, a spontaneous, unplanned chorus of one of Elvis's gospel songs. The sound filled the air around Graceland, a gift of noise for the man who'd known when to be quiet. Emma's story spread through the Elvis fan community and beyond. It became a reminder that Elvis's legacy wasn't just about music and performances. It was also about the quiet moments, the private kindnesses, the times he used his fame not to take up space, but to create space for others. Today, Emma Chen runs a clinic in Boston specializing in selective mutism. In her waiting room, there's a framed photo of Elvis and a plaque that reads, "Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is listen to silence." Every August 16th, Emma still makes her pilgrimage to Graceland. She stands at the gates, now in her 50s, and she sings. Her voice is strong and clear, a voice that was silent for 28 months, that found its way back because someone understood that silence isn't the absence of something. It's a presence all its own. The story of Emma and Elvis reminds us that we live in a world that's afraid of silence. We fill every moment with noise, music, conversation, television, phones. We're uncomfortable with quiet. But sometimes silence is exactly what's needed. Sometimes the most profound communication happens when no one is speaking. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, understood this paradox. His life was defined by noise, by the roar of crowds, the blast of amplifiers, the constant clamor of fame. But he also understood the power of silence. On that day in 1975, in a Boston hospital room, Elvis gave an 8-year-old girl the most valuable gift he could offer: acceptance without conditions, presence without expectations, understanding without words. And 2 years later, that gift gave Emma her voice back. Not because Elvis tried to make her speak, but because he showed her it was okay not to. The greatest acts of kindness are often the quietest. The most powerful presence is sometimes silent. And the truest form of understanding is accepting someone exactly as they are, without needing them to change to make us comfortable. Elvis sat in silence with a silent little girl. And in doing so, he taught her and all of us that sometimes the most eloquent thing we can say is nothing at all. If this story of silence, presence, and the power of acceptance moved you, subscribe and share it. Have you ever needed someone to just sit with you in silence? Let us know in the comments. And hit that notification bell for more true stories about the quiet moments that change everything.